My husband said I brought nothing to the marriage, so I took back the one thing he never expected. I was stirring the pot of his favorite stew, letting the smell fill our quiet kitchen, when Henry looked up from his plate and said the words that cracked my world open. You know, Juliet, sometimes I think I married down. You brought nothing into this marriage. My hand froze in midair. The spoon dripped broth onto the floor, but he didn't even look. He just kept eating, chewing slow, calm, like he hadn't just slammed 27 years of my life into the ground. The room felt smaller. My chest felt tight. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. He didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't care. I sat down across from him, watching the man I had loved age into someone I barely knew. His fork scraped the plate. My heart scraped itself clean. That night, something inside me broke, and something else woke up. He didn't explain. He didn't repeat himself. He just kept eating, bite after bite, as if the insult had been nothing more than a passing comment about the weather. I watched him in silence, memorizing the words he'd thrown like stones. Married down. Brought nothing. Every syllable felt sharp. He wiped his mouth, stood, and carried his plate to the sink. No apology, no glance back at me. When he went upstairs, the house felt different, colder, hollow, stripped of the warmth I once tried so hard to build. I sat there long after he slept, staring at the wall. Those words repeated in my head like a warning. That was the night love didn't just die, it turned to dust. And as the dust settled, something new formed inside me, silence, yes, but also a spark. He thought I brought nothing. He was about to learn the cost of underestimating me. If stories like this grip you, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. I couldn't sleep. His words kept hitting me again and again, like small stones thrown at a window until it cracks. By morning, I walked downstairs with a tight chest and a tight smile. Henry sat at the table sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. He didn't look up. That told me everything. To him, the insult wasn't a mistake, it was truth. So I tested my own. When he left for work, I opened the joint bank account online. The balance shocked me. Nearly empty. The savings we spent years building had vanished, leaving crumbs behind. I checked the investment portfolio next. My name was gone. Not reduced, removed. Quietly. Legally. Like I had never existed on the paperwork. My hands shook, but my mind didn't. Instead, it grew sharp. He had erased me on paper long before he tried to erase me at dinner. And now, I needed to know how deep the cut went. As I stared at the empty bank page, my past rose up like an old friend. Not the soft kind, the kind that reminded you of what you survived. I remembered the land. My grandmother's land. The one piece of our family history that had passed from mother to daughter for 3 generations. I remembered standing at the lawyer's office years ago, signing the papers to sell it so Henry could start his first company. He had cried that day, said he would never forget what I gave him. But he forgot. I remembered the long nights helping him build that business, sorting invoices at the kitchen table, learning bookkeeping, cooking at midnight so he didn't starve during early years. I brought more than something. I brought everything. And the truth stung like cold water on open skin. Henry hadn't forgotten my contribution. He had rewritten it. And that meant the betrayal wasn't new. It had been growing behind me for years, quiet as a shadow. I didn't plan to go to the party, but Henry insisted. He said it would look strange if I stayed home again, and he needed his wife to keep up appearances. So I dressed, smiled, and walked in with him. The room filled with laughter, glasses clinking, music humming. It should have felt normal, but I felt like a stranger in my own life. Then came the moment, the one that cracked the air. Someone praised his success, saying he'd built something impressive from nothing. Henry laughed and pointed at me. My wife's biggest talent is spending my money. The group roared with laughter. I smiled politely. Inside, something curled tight and dark. I studied his face while he enjoyed the joke. He didn't notice the heat in my eyes or the quiet storm forming behind my ribs. That was the night I understood he wasn't cruel by accident. He was cruel by habit. And cruelty leaves a trail. It started with a smell. A soft, sweet scent on his shirt as he tossed it toward the laundry basket. I paused, fingers brushing the fabric. The perfume wasn't mine. I held it up. New fragrance at work. He didn't flinch. Clients hug, Juliet. Don't start imagining things. But I didn't imagine. I observed. He showered quickly, humming in a way he hadn't in years. He shaved, styled his hair, and checked his phone with a secret smile. When he walked past me, he smelled nothing like the man who mocked me at parties. A week later, I saw it again, perfume on his collar, lipstick smudge so faint most eyes would miss it. He didn't argue much anymore. He didn't need to. He thought I wasn't paying attention. But I watched everything. Every late night work call, every sudden meeting, every unexplained hour. The signs weren't loud. They whispered. And I listened to whispers better than shouts. Because whispers usually hide truth. The bills came in plain white envelopes, easy to ignore unless you recognized the companies. High-end boutiques. Luxury brands. A hotel I had never stayed in. All addressed to me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I opened them. Credit cards under my name, charges I never made. Jewelry, shoes, dinners for two. My stomach twisted when I read the amounts. Then it twisted again when I saw the handwriting on the signature line. My name, but not my hand. He was using my credit to fund his mistress. I sat on the couch, holding the bills like they were heavy stones. The betrayal wasn't sharp, it was slow, thick, heavy. He had mocked me, erased me, and replaced me. Now he was using my identity to pay for her life. I folded each bill carefully, placed them in a neat stack, and breathed out. This wasn't just a crack in the marriage. It was a buried mine. And Henry had stepped on it. I visited a lawyer the next morning, a quiet woman named Elaine who listened more than she spoke. Her office felt warm, but I felt cold. I handed her the forged credit statements. She studied them carefully, eyes narrowing. Juliet, this isn't small. I know, I said. She called in her assistant and pulled up our financial records. In minutes, she discovered something I hadn't expected. My signature had been forged on multiple documents, investment papers, loan agreements, property transfers. Legally, I had been made to look dependent. Legally, he had taken everything that once had my name on it. Elaine looked at me with a mix of sympathy and calculation. He didn't just hide assets. He erased your contribution. On purpose. I felt a strange calm settle in my chest. Not fear. Not grief. Something steadier. Something that knew storms didn't last forever, and sometimes they cleared the air. Henry had rewritten history. But history could be corrected. It happened on a warm morning as I stepped outside to water my plants. Mrs. Avery, our chatty neighbor, waved from her porch. Juliet, she called. So Henry leave earlier. New car. My heart tightened. New car. She nodded. Young woman dropped him off. Pretty thing. Looked about 30. Drove his car straight out of your driveway. I kept my smile steady. Oh. Must be a work thing. She shrugged and went back to her flowers. But her words echoed. A young woman. Dropping him off. In his car. Every piece clicked into place like a cruel puzzle. The perfume. The long hours. The forged credit cards. The way he looked at me like I was furniture rather than a wife. But instead of breaking, I felt myself solidify. He wasn't just betraying me. He was replacing me publicly. Humiliatingly. And humiliation has a strange way of killing fear. What stayed behind wasn't weakness. It was resolve. That night I stood in the bathroom staring at my reflection. My hair had more gray streaks than before. My eyes looked tired, older, but sharper. I touched the mirror lightly. He said I brought nothing, I whispered. And then it hit me, he forgot I brought him everything he owns. The land. The money. The work. The years. I saw myself clearly for the first time in a long while, not as the woman he ignored but as the woman who built the foundation he was standing on. Without me, he had nothing. The thought didn't comfort me. It awakened me. Because men like Henry didn't fall on their own. They needed help. And I had just enough strength left to give him a push. I didn't know how yet. But I knew this, the story wasn't ending. It was shifting. Slowly. Quietly. And soon, the shift would become a storm. 2 days later, I met with Thomas, my late uncle's old accountant and someone who had known my family long before Henry appeared. His office smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner. When I told him why I came, he looked at me with careful eyes that already knew something was wrong. I need to know if any records exist about my grandmother's trust, I said. He opened a file drawer, flipped through folders, and pulled out one with my maiden name. Juliet, there's something you should see. Inside were documents I hadn't laid eyes on in decades. Statements. Registrations. And one detail that made my heart stop. Henry's company, the company he claimed he built alone, was registered under my family trust name during its first years. He hadn't just used my grandmother's land money. He had built his empire on my legacy. Not borrowed. Not shared. Used. And he had hidden that fact, even from me. Truth doesn't whisper, it shouts. I walked out of Thomas's office with my heart beating slow, steady, and cold. The air outside felt different, sharper, like even the wind understood something had shifted. I didn't break. I didn't cry. I just stood still until the storm inside me settled into something clear, purpose. If Henry had taken from me so easily, I could take back with the same ease. But instead of yelling, accusing, or packing a bag, I chose silence. Not weakness, strategy. I spent the evening watching him move around the house, laughing at his phone, humming in the kitchen, acting like a man who believed he was untouchable. He poured himself wine, glanced at me once, and didn't see the fire behind my calm smile. Let him enjoy it. Let him think he had won. Because the moment I decided not to confront him was the moment revenge found its shape. Quiet revenge is the sharpest kind. When I couldn't sleep, I returned to the trust documents Thomas had given me. I read every line, slowly, until one detail stood out so boldly I almost laughed. I still owned 30% of Henry's company. Not secretively. Legally. The shares had been placed under my maiden name at the start, back when the business was small and the future uncertain. He must have forgotten. Or believed I would never find out. But I did. And 30% wasn't just ownership. It was power. Real, heavy, undeniable power. I traced my finger across the signature line, my grandmother's handwriting, the same hand that raised me, the same hand that taught me strength didn't need noise. Henry thought I brought nothing. Yet here was proof that I owned a piece of everything he claimed. A piece large enough to change everything. A piece sharp enough to cut him down. Quietly. Cleanly. Beautifully. The next step wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a phone call. I reached out to the remaining members of the family trust, my cousins, who had always respected me even when Henry treated me like an accessory. We met at a small cafe, tucked away from curious eyes. I showed them the documents. The truth hit them like it had hit me, heavy but empowering. I explained what Henry had done, how he had erased me, how he had used the trust's foundation to grow his fortune, then pushed me out as if I never mattered. Their faces hardened with quiet anger. Juliet, my cousin Lena said, "Grandmother would want you to take back control." And with that, they signed the forms transferring voting control of the trust to me. Just like that, the balance shifted. Not loudly. Not publicly. But deeply. I walked out holding the papers in my bag, feeling taller. Power didn't roar. It whispered. The corporate party glittered with glass walls, bright lights, and people pretending to be important. Henry loved these events, places where he could play the role of the charming businessman. I came because I needed to watch him. And I wasn't disappointed. He walked in with a young woman on his arm, slim, polished, confident. He introduced her as a new investor. But I saw the way she clung to him. I saw the way he smiled back. And I saw the way people around them exchanged glances like they already knew what he thought he was hiding. I stayed in the shadows, observing. He never missed me. Not once. The girl laughed at his jokes while he prinned like a man who believed he'd shredded up. But he had no idea that the real investor in the room was me. He had brought his mistress to flaunt his victory. He didn't know the ground under him had already begun to crack. When I finally stepped into the party's main hall, the room shifted. Conversations faded. Eyes followed me like I was a ghost returning to claim something lost. Henry froze. His mistress blinked at me, confused. I smiled gently, the way older women are expected to smile, warm, harmless. He smirked. "You still show up?" Bold. I stepped closer, letting my calm settle like dust around him. "Always," I said. He wanted the crowd to see him as the winner, the stronger one, the man moving on while his old wife clung to dignity. So I let him. Because letting a man think he has won makes his fall much sweeter. I greeted everyone kindly, walked with slow grace, and watched him glow with arrogance. No one knew I held more power in my handbag than he held in his entire company. And Henry, foolish Henry, kept laughing. Not knowing the stage was already being built for his ruin. Later that night, I followed them out onto the balcony. They didn't see me slip behind the curtains. They thought they were alone. Henry leaned close to her, his voice low. "Don't worry. Juliet can't touch a dime. It's all mine now." She giggled. "Are you sure?" "Completely. I built it." She brought nothing. My hand tightened around my phone as I pressed record. He kept talking. Bragging. Destroying himself word by word. "She won't get a cent when I'm done. I moved everything. She's powerless." His arrogance was a gift. His lies were evidence. His voice, steady and proud, would become the rope he tied around his own neck. When the mistress asked if he loved her, he laughed. "Love? I enjoy her. That's enough." I stopped recording. I slipped away quietly, unseen. That night, long before revenge began, justice found its first thread. My lawyer, Elaine, listened to the recording with a raised brow and a slow nod. "This," she said, "is enough to start a fire." But she wasn't done. She ordered a deeper search: ownership fraud, identity misuse, asset concealment. Each term sounded heavier than the last. Henry had left fingerprints everywhere. The forged documents, the credit cards, the trust registration, the bragging recording, everything lined up like dominoes waiting for the first push. Elaine typed notes quickly, her face calm but fierce. "Juliet, this isn't just divorce material. This is criminal." A strange relief washed over me. Not happiness. Not triumph. Validation. For years I felt something was off. For years he made me feel small. Now the truth stood tall beside me. Elaine looked up. "Once we file, the storm will hit him fast." I nodded. "I'm ready." But inside, I wasn't thinking of storms. I was thinking of control, clean, quiet control. The kind he'd never see coming. I took the next step alone. I visited a rival farm, people Henry hated, people he once mocked at dinners. They welcomed me with polite curiosity until I showed them my documents. Their eyes widened. "You own 30%. "Yes." "And you're willing to leverage it?" "Yes." The meeting shifted from polite interest to sharp focus. They brought out their financial officer, then their strategist. Papers spread across the table. "We've wanted to buy into his company for years," the strategist said. "He always kept outsiders out. Now he can't," I told them. They didn't know the full story. They didn't need to. They only needed to know I had shares and a reason to use them. By the time I left, the rival firm had begun purchasing small public shares quietly, piece by piece. What Henry didn't know was that that unknown investor buying into his company was me. Every share they bought tightened the net. Every deal made the trap stronger. At dinner that night, Henry sat across from me with a smug ease that made the candles flicker like they wanted to leave the room. He cut his steak, chewed slowly, and said, "Once I'm rid of you, I'll finally be free." Free. The word hung in the air like a challenge. I sipped my water and looked at him, really looked. The man who claimed he built everything. The man who believed he owned the world. The man who thought I was stuck, blind, weak. I leaned forward just an inch. "Free?" I whispered. He smirked. "Yes. Free." I held his gaze, calm as still water. "You'll find out soon enough." He laughed at that, waving his fork like I'd told a joke. But for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, confusion. Maybe even a hint of fear. He didn't know why. He didn't know how. But he felt it. The shift. The coming storm. And storms always reveal the truth. The shareholder meeting took place in a tall glass building Henry adored, his castle, as he liked to call it. He walked in proud, confident, already rehearsing the speech he planned to give about a new merger. He didn't notice me slip into the back row. Executives filled the room, chatting, shaking hands. Then the chairperson stood and cleared his throat. "Before we begin, we have a change in voting authority. Our new majority shareholder will be leading today's session." Henry grinned, he believed they meant him. Until they said my name. Mrs. Juliet Anderson Cole. The room fell silent. Henry's head snapped toward me, eyes wide, mouth open, stunned. I walked forward calmly, papers in hand. He whispered, "No, that's impossible." But nothing was impossible when you owned the foundation someone else built their pride on. I took my seat at the head of the table. For the first time, Henry understood something: the game had turned. He jumped to his feet. "This is fraud. She has no authority here." The board members stared, confused, flipping through their folders. I opened mine and slid the trust documents across the polished table. "Henry," I said softly, your company was built under my family trust. And you forgot that. His face drained. No, you, Juliet, you don't understand what you're doing. Oh, I understand perfectly. Gasps floated around the room as the executives read the papers. Someone whispered, she owns 30%. Henry's hands shook. He tried to speak again, but the words tangled. You brought nothing, he had said. Now the truth stood in front of him like a mirror he couldn't escape. I met his eyes and added, nothing's impossible when you own the foundation. The silence became heavy, thick, final. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt equal to the room, no, above it. Henry wasn't the king anymore. I stood slowly. I'd like to call for a vote, I said. A motion to remove Henry Cole as CEO effective immediately. He spun toward the executives. You all know what I've built. You know who I am. They looked at him, then at me, then at the documents. One by one, hands rose. Every hand except his. The vote was unanimous. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Revenge doesn't always roar, sometimes it sighs with relief. Henry slumped into his chair, stunned. His kingdom, his pride, his title, gone in seconds. He whispered, Juliet, please, but he hadn't said please when he erased my accounts. He hadn't said please when he used my name for debt. He hadn't said please when he called me nothing. I picked up the gavel the board chair handed me. Henry Cole, I said, voice steady, you are removed. The gavel struck the table. Exactly like the moment my heart broke, final. Irreversible. The mistress had been seated in the back, legs crossed, playing with her bracelet, thinking she was part of a victory moment. When the vote ended, she panicked. People whispered. Cameras flashed. Headlines were already forming. Henry reached for her hand, but she pulled away fast. I can't be part of this, she stammered. Wait, he begged, grabbing her wrist. She snatched it back. You said you controlled everything. You said she was powerless. I raised an eyebrow. So did everyone watching. She looked around, saw the eyes, the judgment, the fall of the man she had bet her comfort on. Then she ran. Literally ran out the door, leaving him alone in the shame he created. Reporters waiting outside caught everything, the breakup, the meltdown, the shouting. A once powerful man left calling after someone who was never loyal to begin with. It was almost poetic. Almost. But we were nowhere near the end of his fall. This was where the revenge truly began. That afternoon, using my newly confirmed authority, I met with the company's financial team. I want every account tied to Henry Cole frozen pending investigation, I instructed. No one argued. By evening, Henry's credit cards were declined. His car service rejected. His hotel memberships locked. He stormed into our house, slamming cabinets, yelling my name. I stayed calm at the kitchen counter, sipping tea. What did you do? He shouted. I set the cup down gently. Protected company assets. They are my assets. Not anymore. He grabbed his wallet, trying different cards, each one failing. This is illegal, he snapped. So were your forged signatures, I replied softly. The color drained from his face. For the first time, he knew I had seen everything. Exposed everything. And I wasn't done. He had called me nothing. Now he understood what nothing looked like. When it finally came for him. By the next morning, he discovered the second hit. The house, the one he bragged about owning, the one he claimed he paid for alone, wasn't his. It had always been in my name. Purchased with my inheritance. When he drove home after failing to withdraw cash, he found his belongings neatly packed on the porch. A locksmith walked on the front door while I stood quietly by the window. Henry pounded the door. "Juliet. Stop this. We can talk." But we had talked. For years I spoke kindly, gently, carefully, and he answered with insults, silence, and betrayal. I opened the small side window. "Your new home will need to be something you can afford. Start with something small." "You can't do this," he yelled. "I already did." The locksmith nodded to me and tightened the final bolt. The lock clicked, a soft, certain sound. A perfect answer to every cruel word he ever gave me. He was out. And I was done. I waited 2 more days before sending the final blow to the press. An anonymous email, simple and quiet, containing the audio file Henry himself had gifted me. The bragging. The lies. The mysteries. The words, "She can't touch a dime, it's all mine now." By noon, every news site in the city had published it. By evening, the internet did what the internet always does, it judged. Headlines screamed, "Man who said his wife brought nothing loses everything she built." His face appeared in memes, comments, videos. People laughed at him the same way he once laughed at me at the party. He called me 15 times. Left messages. Begged. Cursed. Then begged again. But I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because this wasn't about caring anymore. This was about truth being louder than lies. And his lies were finally echoing back at him. He tried to fight back. He sued me, claiming I stole his company, his home, his future. I sat in the courtroom calm as warm tea while his lawyer shouted nonsense. Then Elaine stood. She played the recording. She presented the forged signatures. She showed every bill linked to my stolen identity. She revealed the trust documents connecting my grandmother's legacy to his empire. Henry buried his face in his hands. The judge looked over her glasses and said, "Mr. Cole, this is not a dispute. This is fraud." He tried to speak, but she lifted her hand. "Enough." She ruled in my favor instantly, full protection of all assets, reinstatement of my financial rights, and damages owed to me for years of deceit. Henry slumped back like someone had pulled the bones out of him. The courtroom murmured. Justice didn't just stand on my side. It marched. The next weeks were busy. I restructured the company from the inside. Removed Henry's loyalists. Promoted the people he ignored. I renamed the entire corporation Legacy Industries, honoring the grandmother whose land built the first brick of everything Henry claimed. The new motto was simple, built from what they called nothing. Employees applauded when the new sign went up. Some cried. I did too, quietly, when no one saw. Not because I missed Henry, but because for the first time in years, I felt myself growing back into my own life. Stronger. Calmer. Clearer. I walked through the office halls people once avoided me in. Now they smiled, greeted me, thanked me. Henry had built walls. I was building bridges. And the company thrived under that difference. The world finally knew the truth, I wasn't a shadow behind a man. I was the woman who rebuilt the whole house. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a women's business event. Something I never imagined for myself. I stood on stage in a simple navy dress, lights warm on my face. The host introduced me as the woman who turned betrayal into power. The crowd applauded. I breathed in, held the microphone, and spoke. My husband once told me I brought nothing into our marriage. But the truth is, I was the value he couldn't measure. The room fell silent, then erupted in cheers. Women stood. Some cried. Some raised fists. Some mouthed thank you. I smiled, not the polite smile I used to hide behind, but the real one I hadn't worn in years. That speech became a feature in a magazine, then a video, then a message shared all across social media. I didn't plan to inspire anyone. I only planned to survive. But sometimes survival becomes strength. And strength becomes a story. Henry's world shrank fast. Clients left him. His name became a warning, not an invitation. One afternoon, reporters caught him outside the courthouse, hair messy, shirt wrinkled, shouting at cameras. "She stole my life," he yelled, pointing wildly. The internet's answer came quick: she just took back what was hers. I watched the clip from my office, calm, almost sad. Not for him, but for the man he could have been if greed hadn't eaten him alive. He tried to rebuild, but every door he knocked on stayed closed. His arrogance had burned all his bridges, then my silence only made him look guiltier. For years he held the power to shame me, belittle me, erase me. Now he held nothing, not even his own reputation. And the world watched him fall the same way I once watched him rise. But this time, I wasn't standing behind him. I was standing above the ruins. The mistress reached out next. She sent an email first, then asked for a meeting. I agreed, curious. She arrived nervous, clutching her purse like a shield. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "He told me you were cold. That you didn't care about him. That he built everything alone." I listened quietly. She wiped her eyes. "I believed him. I'm sorry." Her apology didn't fix anything, but it mattered. She had been used too, just in a different way. "I forgive you," I said. She froze, then sagged with relief. Forgiving her wasn't weakness. It was freedom. Because revenge wasn't about hurting everyone, just the one who truly deserved it. Before she left, she whispered, "You're stronger than he ever said." I smiled softly. "I know." And for the first time, she smiled back. We didn't shake hands. We didn't hug. But we understood each other, two women who had escaped the same storm. It happened late one evening. My office lights were low, the city glowing outside my window, when I had a knock. Henry stepped in, thinner, tired, desperate. "Juliet, please. Just hear me out." I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I didn't soften. He stepped closer. "I lost everything. The company, the house, the deals, all of it. I need one more chance." I kept typing. He swallowed hard. "Please look at me." His voice trembled, the same man who once called me nothing now begging for something. I finally lifted my eyes. "Henry," I said, "you told me I brought nothing." He winced. "So now," I continued, closing my laptop, "you won't miss me." His shoulders collapsed. He tried again, voice cracking. "Juliet," but I stood, opened the door, and nodded toward the hallway. There was nothing left to say. He walked out slowly. And I let the door close behind him. Quiet. Final. Soon after, a streaming company reached out. They wanted to create a docuseries based on my story. They called it Nothing to Everything. The title made me smile. I sat with their team, telling them about my grandmother's land, the long nights helping Henry build the business, the insults, the betrayal, the awakening. But more importantly, I told them about rebuilding, how a woman can lose everything and still rise stronger. The director leaned back and said, "Your story will help a lot of people." And maybe it would. For years, I lived quietly in someone else's shadow. Now I had a chance to shine light on women who felt trapped, erased, or forgotten. I signed the contract, not for revenge, but for purpose. If my pain could guide someone else out of theirs, then it wasn't wasted. Stories heal. And telling mine felt like closing the last wound Henry ever left on me. Henry tried to move on. He applied for jobs, small firms, startups, consulting roles, but everywhere he went, people recognized him from the headlines. Whispers followed him like shadows. That's the man who forged documents. That's the man who mocked his wife. That's the man who lost everything. One company even printed the rejection email online. He blamed me, of course. But I didn't push the world against him. He had done that himself. You can't repair a reputation built on lies once the truth comes out. He tried to call me again, but I blocked his number. Not out of anger, but out of peace. Let him face the world he created. Let him walk the path he paved. Karma didn't need help. It only needed time. And time caught him fully. While I grew stronger, his world shrank to the size of his own regrets. I stood on a large stage months later, invited to speak at a major entrepreneurship conference, something younger Juliet never imagined. The crowd filled the hall, eyes bright, waiting. I held the microphone and breathed in slow. He said I brought nothing, I began. But the truth was simple, I was the value he couldn't measure. The room erupted in applause. Women stood. Men nodded. Some wiped tears. I felt my grandmother's strength behind me, her land beneath every word I spoke. I talked about rebuilding, about reclaiming identity, about how silence can hide strength, not weakness. When I finished, the applause didn't stop. I stepped off the stage with a warm heart, knowing the message had landed deeper than I expected. I wasn't just the woman Henry tried to erase. I was the woman who rewrote the ending. And people listened, really listened. Because sometimes the quietest voices rise the loudest. With the company strong and my own life steady, I created something new, an organization called the Nothing Foundation. It offered support to women recovering from financial betrayal, legal help, emergency funds, counseling, and career training. Every brochure carried the message, when they say you brought nothing, remember, nothing is where rebuilding begins. Women wrote letters. Shared stories. Asked for guidance. I met with many of them personally. Some cried in my arms. Some found courage in their own voices. Each time, I felt a piece of my past transform into something useful. Pain becoming purpose. Loss becoming light. I didn't create the foundation for recognition. I created it because I wished someone had done the same for me when my world first cracked. Helping them healed me. And with each woman who stood back up, my grandmother's legacy grew stronger. Nothing had become everything. Months later, a newspaper ran a full-page article, "The Woman Who Took Back Everything He Thought She'd Lost." The photo showed me standing in front of the new Legacy Industries building, chin lifted, smiling softly. When I saw it, I teared up. Not because of pride, though I felt that too, but because the girl I once was, the girl who sold her grandmother's land, who stayed up late over invoices, who believed in Henry more than he believed in himself. She finally got her life back. Friends mailed me clippings. Former coworkers congratulated me. Even strangers wrote letters saying they saw themselves in my story. I put the article on my office wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder I didn't rise alone. I rose on the strength of every woman who had ever been told she was less. Including me. Especially me. And I was done believing lies. One quiet morning, while I was reading in a coffee shop, Henry walked in. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders slumped, clothes wrinkled, eyes tired. He noticed me and froze. After a long moment, he walked over. "Juliet, can we talk?" I closed my book gently. "No, Henry," I said. "Not anymore." He swallowed. I don't understand how everything went so wrong. I studied him, not with anger, but with distance. Then I opened my wallet, took out a $10 bill, and set it on the table. He looked confused. "This," I said softly, "is something. Now I've given you something." He blinked, stunned, maybe even hurt, but I felt nothing. No joy. No hate. Just closure. I stood, gathered my things, and walked out into a world that finally belonged to me. He didn't follow. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe he never would. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. The final act of my journey came quietly. One afternoon, I returned to the trust office and signed a transfer, giving my late grandmother's land, the land I once sold for Henry, back to my foundation. A full circle. A healing. A reclaiming. As I signed my name, I felt her presence beside me, steady as warm sunlight. He said I brought nothing, I whispered. But from nothing, I built everything. When I walked out of the building, the city skyline glowed gold. At the top of Legacy Industries, my name shone on the glass like a promise: legacy starts here. I smiled, not for Henry, not for revenge, but for myself, and for every woman who would rise because I did. My life didn't end the night he insulted me. It began. And now, the world knew the truth. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe for more powerful revenge stories.